Hey, great day, everyone. It's CJ. Hopefully, everyone is having a fantastic day so far. Thank you. I was scheduled to do a live stream last night, but I tell you what, that State of the Union was just so dull that I think I fell asleep through half of it. And I'm like, you know what? It's not worth my time and effort to respond. But thank you for all tuning in today to this live stream. Again, this is OMC Open Mic Cast number 5. And today I'm very excited to be joined by a good friend, colleague. I've followed his work way before I became friends with him, and the utmost respect for all his work and everything that he does to help not only the communities that I work with, but also something that's very important to me, and that's also the Christian-based, the gospel-based network. And so excited to be joined by Rory Hall. Many of you probably are familiar with his work from the original Daily Coin. Rory has kind of pivoted from that in his new site, which is awesome. I definitely recommend bookmarking it. Is the gospelnewsnetwork.org. You can also follow him on Twitter as well, which is, I'll put the links in the description post the discussion today, but it's at Gospel News Net W1. So without further ado, let's bring in Rory Hall of the Gospel News Network. So Rory, how are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, CJ, and I appreciate all your kind words. And the feeling is mutual. I've really started paying attention to Rogue News and what you and V were doing because of you and because of your voice. And I love V. Don't get me wrong. I have great respect for him, but the commentary that you add to that is vital, in my opinion. It is absolutely vital. So I appreciate all of what you're doing, and thank you for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, Rory, whenever this whole event started folding with Ukraine, and I went to church this past Sunday, and some of the conversation there was and the first person that came to my mind was you and your work and everything that you do with the Gospel News Network, because I think we're entering a very interesting time period, Rory, and I think a lot of it is based upon scripture. I know that you spend a lot more time researching, truly understanding the events unfolding, kind of monitoring. I know you have a vast network of people who have been talking about this event that's unfolding in regards to Russia and Ukraine. So before we hit the live button, you started sharing about some of the conversations, some of the things that you've been engaged with on social media. So why don't you share like your ideas, your perspectives of where we are during these most interesting times indeed?
When everything started unfolding in Ukraine, it was like, okay, I'm going in. I'm going to approach this in a much different way. I got baited with the scandemic that they've now shut down and swapped it for a war. If you remember, CJ, I mean, I've apologized a couple of times live publicly, and for falling for the garbage and when it first started rolling out with the Wuhan bat flu stew. I bought into it. Now, that ain't happening this time. And now looking back, I can hardly believe that I fell for their garbage, 2 years ago. But anyway, since when do tractors pull tanks out of a battlefield in a war? That Okay, so
Yep.
that's the first thing, and it's like, okay, and then there's another video of so-called Russian soldiers that were shopping in Kiev a couple of days ago, and it's like, this is not right. There's something very, very wrong here, and of course, the default by the criminals here in the United States is to go to the SWIFT system. Say, well, we're just going to throw them out of the SWIFT system. Do you think that Russia's not prepared for that? Well, if you don't think so, then you haven't been paying attention. You should know at this point that they have their own alternative to the SWIFT, and it's tied conveniently to the Chinese alternative to the SWIFT system. They operate independently, but they are both tied together. And I'm saying all this to say that what's happening falls into the category of, in my opinion, is rumors of war. You have in Matthew 26 or 24, one of them said that, in the end times you will hear of wars and rumors of war. He also talks about in verse 7, that's verse 6, verse 7, Jesus talks about the plagues that will encompass the world. So we have that in spades right now. Okay. We're just coming out of this so-called plague. That was nothing more than a rumor and a lie. And now we're entering into a rumor of war. I personally believe that this is nothing more than another charade in order to attack the dollar. Because you have to remember, the United States has to go away. The United States, as much as it pains me to say that, and as much as it hurts my heart to even think about that, the United States has to make way. The Constitution has to go away and everything has to change. Because as Rabbi Jonathan Cahn, he is a Messianic Jew, pointed out that there's only been two nations in the history of the world that have been touched by God. That's Israel and the United States. All the other nations they just happen. Israel and the United States, God had a hand in their creation, period. And if you don't believe me, go back and read the Constitution, read the Bill of Rights, read what these men were writing about. They were writing about our Creator, which is God. And, people are going to say, well, they were all a bunch of Freemasons and this and that and so forth. And okay, so what? They were also godly men as well. So all of these things that are unfolding right now, in my opinion, there's a lot to it, and then there's nothing. So the story that we're being fed on TV is not the story, as you well know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Right.
So
definitely. I think these are events unfolding. I don't want to say that it's been orchestrated. It's been time, because we get some in the alt media that say that, that all these nations are working together and structurally bringing about the reformation and the global change in our system. And I think, Rory, what you're speaking to in terms of the United States is specifically tied to the dollar and the dollar losing its status as the world reserve currency.
Mm-hmm.
Many of I know the people that are listening to this stream right now completely understand that what we're saying, but I think for a vast majority of people who live in the United States, people who still are programmed into the mainstream media, do not understand that when the dollar loses its status as the world reserve currency, our status, our way of life in America is fundamentally going to change. It's going to look a lot different. We're going to have to go through those struggles, right? We're going to have to go through those struggles of inflation in terms of shortages of everything from raw materials to finished products, hyperinflation, and we're starting to see some of the signs of that as we speak. And I agree with your assessment in terms of the amount of the hype, in terms of the escalation of what's occurring. My biggest fear is that, you have, and I didn't even know this, and where it made me really think about this was I was listening to a podcast, I believe last night, or maybe even reading. I was up late, so forgive me for that. But one of the things that I completely was unaware of, and many people are struggling to understand this, is that for the most part, Israel has remained neutral through these escalations. In fact, they tried to broker some peace talks between Ukraine and Russia. But I was not aware until understanding it that part of that reason is twofold. Is one is that from again, this is from commentary, was that Israel needs Russia to help broker negotiations and talks with Iran, because everyone's very familiar with Israel and Iran and their conflict there. But then also the vast history of Ukraine as it relates to the genocide that occurred there, where potentially up to 100,000 Jews were exterminated in Ukraine. Ukraine was very heavily involved. So they have a history there of why they're not jumping into this, not saying that they're excusing the actions of Putin or anything like that, but I think I think we have to note that because we hear time and time again, and people are like, well, what kind of Nazis are in, the Ukraine, and why is this just now coming to the fold? Because I saw another post was that, like, to me, like, if you're just figuring out and assessing from the challenges with Ukraine, but you haven't been paying attention to the challenges in Libya and Syria and Yemen, the
Cutter.
the Yemenis, Qatar, the vast loss of life, then you've been programmed. You've been programmed because now you're systematically, because of the system, focusing all your attention on Ukraine when these similar things like this have been unfolding, where we're witnessing genocide occur on mass scale, in particular with Yemen, where you have the United States and the UK who are basically providing weapons, aerial assaults, protection and everything for
drone strikes of hospitals,
drone strikes in Yemen, and helping the Saudis with this war that's been an illegal war that's been going on for several years. And I think that everyone needs to kind of like spot check themselves. And if they're saying, well, I don't know what's going on with Yemen, I have no idea. Well, then maybe you should pause for a moment, and before you put on a hashtag stand with Ukraine, or you change your profile to include the Ukraine flag, maybe you need to do a gut check and ask yourself, have you been paying attention to all this? Now, I get that. I get the last few years have been very difficult in as it relates to COVID and everything, but we're very much susceptible to believing what the media puts in front of us, of Rory, and we're kind of being led down that same path with the Ukraine and the Russian escalation.
Right. That's why I prefaced everything that I just said with, I'm taking a step back, I'm taking a deep breath before I believe any of it. And then when I see images of a tractor, of a John Deere pulling a so-called Russian tank, it's like, those things don't go together.
Not
at
at all.
This should not be happening. And I've been asking out. I still have the Daily Coin Twitter account, and I have Gospel News Network Twitter account. So I'm asking in both of those, how is it that a group of citizens with AK-47s and Molotov cocktails are staving off one of the world's largest, most technologically advanced armies in the world? How is that even possible? And somebody said, well, have you not seen how fierce these people are? It's like, they don't have the capability of wiping out the entire global population 500 times or more. Okay. They don't have that. So they can be as fierce as they want. Doesn't matter. It does not. Why is Russia running out of gas on their way to Ukraine? Hello?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, does it?
How does
they
that?
They ran out of supplies. The narrative. they ran out of water. They need to slow down. They can't complete their mission.
They can't add 2 + 2. They can't add, well, we're going to go, 1,500 miles. So we might need 1,500 miles worth of gas, but we'll only send them 1,000. It'll be all right.
Right.
They'll just coast at last 500.
Well, and I think it's very reckless, where a lot of people, I don't know Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, personally, or anything like that. But I think in terms of leadership, in terms of, some people look at it as a noble cause, that, like, you're arming your citizens and you're banning people from leaving the country, that, hey, you have to pick up weapons. You need, but you basically have to sacrifice yourself for this without any type of proper assessment. But I would, instead of that offensive and that defensive measurement, I would much rather see some dialogue and some conversation in terms of some real dialogue in regards to resolving this conflict, Rory. But unfortunately, what I see escalation, not only from Zelensky in terms of, hey, we want to get Ukraine and get nuclear weapons back. You have the EU that's like, hey, we need to give them weapons. The United States saying, hey, potentially we need to, like, maybe even stomach the idea of a no-fly zone. And then you compound the fact that we're these major types of terrorists, and removing Russia from SWIFT without the proper assessment to understand logistically of how that potentially is going to backfire and impact
Exactly.
our people here. And so that's what made me think, in particular, Rory, that the events unfolding to me are definitely biblical. I think that we're witnessing the time when, we're going to start to see that the realignment that's occurring. And to understand that, I think that we have to kind of pause for a moment and say, hey, if we're going to bring peace, some type of peace to this deal, we need de-escalation right now. We don't need the rhetoric of, people pounding themselves on the chest and saying, hey, well, this is what we did. We destroyed the Russian economy. We destroyed all those things, because all that's going to do is, you don't push someone into a corner when they feel they have nothing to lose. And I think that's kind of like what we're kind of, what's happening right now is we're kind of seeing that, where people, Ukraine, especially, Vladimir Putin, they're all in. They're at the point of no return. They've bypassed that point. And I know there's a lot of people that are saying that nothing's going to happen. This isn't going to be everyone's going to talk the hype, but then they're going to back away from it. But there's no uncertainty regarding that. I don't have a crystal ball to say that, hey, this is for certain what's going to happen. But my fear is that we're at a very dangerous point, Rory, in the history of mankind. We're at a very dangerous point here.
I agree completely. And there's gonna we don't know what's real anymore. We don't know what direction that things are going. And I think I've said this to you in previous podcasts, that we no longer know what the truth actually is. We don't know what's happening there. We're not there. We haven't been part of any of the meetings that has happened with Vladimir Putin. We haven't been part of any of the meetings that have been going on with Zelensky. We've not been part of any of the meetings that are going on here in the United States, the UK, or any NATO nation. What we have been part of is the fact that Russia, Vladimir Putin, has said on a number of occasions that if the United States, and by proxy NATO, the United States through NATO attacks Russia in any way or declares war, that he will attack the United States, period. So that's a concern for me.
Yep.
And as these people push these things and get up and grandstand and do and talk nonsense, like Kamala, or Biden with his dementia, trying to address these situations that you and I struggle with, and we're both 20, 30 years younger than him.
Yep.
We still have our mental faculties about us, and it's difficult for us to talk about it because it's such a complex situation. And the fact that they've already introduced the SWIFT system as a weapon, that failed us last time when they used it against Iran. It failed us, period.
Right. Yep.
And all it did was make Russia and China both, it made them angry to the point of developing their own parallel banking system, period. That they're getting ready to, I personally believe, I just wrote about this a couple of days ago. I haven't written about any of this for at least 2 years, if not more. And it reminded me of all of what's happening with, there's no mention, if you listen to the mainstream media, you would think that Russia and China just now discovered each other. And they're like, they're becoming these best friends all of a sudden. It's like, wow, they're going to be best friends in the future. Can you say Shanghai Cooperation Organization? Sure you can. Can you say Belt and Road Initiative and Polar Road? Well, if you can't, then you need to pay attention, pay a little bit more attention, because these people are tied at the hip and have been for a decade or more.
Yeah.
It's just that simple.
Very, very well said, Rory.
Give me 1 minute, and then we'll get into the State of the Union.
Yes. Okay,
right.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I want to give a huge shout out again. You're tuning in to CJOMC Open Mic Cast. The whole concept around this is to, really build a different type of platform in terms of people joining the conversation. I joke and say that everyone can be a keyboard warrior, right? Like everyone's talking, and I get that people don't want to come on and be, speak on that, but that's kind of the idea, is to get people to participate. And want to give a shout out to those in the chat room. So Mojo, he was the first in, so shout out to you. Raven 6 is in the house as well, so welcome, Raven. Revolutionary Bliss, Texas Tom Payne, Hari's in the house. So what's up, Hari? I want to make sure I don't miss anyone, because I'll get nasty emails if I forget someone here, Rory. Okay, so let's bring in. We do have a live listener that's going to jump into the conversation as well before we jump into the whole State of the Union. But before we do that, Rory, you wanted a moment to before we pivot into that.
And the reason for it is because you had mentioned Israel and their relationship with Russia a moment ago. Here's what is Russia a few years ago. Not a few years ago, a few weeks ago, they were at the monthly United Nations Security Council meeting in New York, and they said that, quote, was the Deputy Ambassador Dmitry Polyansky. What he told the United Nations Security Council in New York, I think it was on February the 16th or the 23rd. It was one of the two. It was on a Wednesday. Russia doesn't recognize Israel's sovereignty over Golan Heights that are part of Syria. That's what he told them. Okay. That statement that he made is directly from the Ezekiel 39.
Okay.
In Ezekiel 39, the prophet Ezekiel is talking about the Gog and the Magog, Gog and Magog, moving down from the south, taking over nations and engaging in conquests along the way. This is Russia. The Gog, the Magog are what we now know as Russia, and coming down to take Israel. So they're not going to be working together, because Russia just said, we don't recognize that.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
Right? Doesn't work that way.
Yeah, doesn't work that way. Yeah.
So that's kind of a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right? Absolutely. Yeah.
So we've got some things that are happening, that wars, rumors of war, plagues globally. Russia moving in, saying we don't recognize what you're doing over there. These are all big deals.
Yeah,
big deals.
Absolutely. Well, Roy, I also want to bring in to our stream one of our Rogue listeners, very active also in our Rogue Discord channel. So I'm going to bring in Cyber Queen. So Cyber Queen, welcome to the chat. You're currently muted, but I thought we could pivot and talk a little bit around the disorganization of the U.S., the State of the Union address. So Cyber, what say you? What were your thoughts in regards to the State of the Union address?
I saw it last night, and it was comical. It was like theater, lots of standing ovations, lots of yelling, booing. I mean, it was cringeworthy, and it was funny, but like in a sad way, like dark humor. I was just like gobsmacked with just how just fake everything was. It was just so fake. And then just some of the stuff he was saying, but everyone loved the end where Biden said, "Go get him," and they're like, "Go get who? What are we talking about? Like, what's going on?"
Yeah, I think that must have been like a glitch in the Matrix.
And he was talking about like everything under the sun except Ukraine. And then I was like on a very large message board, so I'm like reading comments live while we're watching this show, the Truman Show or the Biden show. And people were upset. They were like, what about student debt? Like, what about student loans? Like, just how this stuff doesn't affect the people on Main Street. It's like, all this money going to help everybody else except the people that really need it. So people were pretty upset.
All the money's going to them and their banker friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there were a couple points in the when I was watching the State of the Union address. I posted on my personal social media feed that I felt like it was kind of a blend between the Twilight Zone and Hunger Games. Like when Nancy Pelosi stood up for whatever reason and started rubbing her hands together.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. It's like, what is she doing?
I felt like she was.
Weren't they talking about poisoning people and
they were talking about
the
poisoning
soldiers,
people? Yes.
the soldiers dying or something?
Yes,
and she's
yes.
like clapping and rubbing her hands. She's like, I don't know, I'm happy, but I can't tell everybody I'm happy about this.
Yeah, I think she had just attended the UN Agenda 2030 meeting talking about depopulation.
She's like, I forgot whether to clap or to be quiet.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. Like when that whole thing happened, and I'm like, is she glitching out? What in the world's going on? And Kamala was sitting back there, and I was watching some of her expressions because I just wanted to see. And I know she had a couple of cringeworthy moments that she was like adamantly listening to what Joe was saying, kind of anticipating him making mistakes. Right? She's like, I know he's gonna screw up at some point, and I'm here to just, I want to distance myself, but I can't. And like the moment that he started talking about, well, we want people to understand, like with the events unfolding in Ukraine and what Russia's doing, that we stand by the Iranian people. And she's like sitting there like saying, it's not Iranian, everything. But yeah, it's just, and even outside of partisan politics lines, I think that's what it truly does. I think it truly emboldens our adversaries to look at a point in history that we're this weak as a nation, as a country, Rory. When you see whether it's our debt, when you look at how much money we're spending recklessly, and there's no monetary responsibility, fiscal policies, and then you compound that with our broken geopolitical side, that geopolitically, especially after the Afghan fallout, that they're quickly realizing, as far as how our adversaries, how the world looks at the United States, is that not only does the emperor have no clothes, but the emperor also has no brain.
Exactly. And that he doesn't. I mean, and I'm laughing, and then in my mind I'm going, I shouldn't be laughing, because these people are seen throughout the world, and they represent the three of us. They represent all of us, and they are a disgrace. If this were 100 years ago, the people that were in those three seats occupying that TV screen, they would immediately go out and commit suicide, period, as a disgrace to themselves, to their family, and especially to their nation. Otherwise, I mean, because that's what they are. I mean, I'm sure you guys heard Kamala's comments, about Ukraine Ukraine is a country over there in Europe, and their neighbor is Russia, and it's a bigger country, and they're mean to Ukraine. And that's bad. It's like, this woman is on the world stage.
Mm-hmm.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
They think we're just dumb or something, the way that they carry on.
That's how I felt about it. I was like, is she talking to like second and third graders? Is that who she's speaking to right now? I'm like, oh no, she's talking to like a national audience on, I think it was some big radio program or some podcast that she was talking to. So as it relates to that, going back to the State of the Union address, whenever they start talking specifically about Ukraine and talking about some of the actions and how they've been able to, hey, we're bringing the entire world against, Russia and everything. It's always concerning to me. Like at one point, there used to be an anti-war, not necessarily policy or party, but there used to be some, hey, let's give peace a chance. And that's one of the things that makes it very difficult, because as you see the bills that are going to be proposed here soon, as far as the spending to fund, Ukraine, as far as the weapons purchases and everything else, it always concerns me that we always see the Republicans and Democrats just lock hands in that. And that's something that, from a bipartisan perspective, they both sign up for. There's no anti-war party at all, or people who want to properly negotiate things. To me, what's happening with Russia and everything that they're doing in terms of canceling out RT, I listen to RT occasionally, but I also listen to a lot of other different news and media. But it's almost like the cancel culture has went global. It's went from shutting people down to, and the cancel culture is now looking at how can we cancel Russia, and that's just not how it works. Like there's no adults in the room to have the proper conversation as to resolve this, and you know it's just very disheartening, and especially for the people of Ukraine. You know, I feel the most for them because they're being dragged through this, and to me, the West is willing to use Ukraine as basically a scorched earth and allow this events to unfold, and they're being led to believe that things are going to happen, that they're going to get weapons, they're going to get things to take place. But all these countries are reneging on that. They're like, well, maybe we can't send them fighter jets. Maybe we can't send them. Logistically, we can't do it. But they're being promised on all these things, but without little or none any type of execution on it. And through the State of the Union address, I felt that both parties locked hands. They were both willing to like, hey, let's do these things. And to me, it's just going to be another massive bailout. We went from the COVID policies that gave billions of dollars.
COVID is over now. COVID is over now. So now we got a new boogeyman to fight.
Yeah, we got a new boogeyman.
The COVID boogeyman is dead. So it's very convenient how that worked out.
Yes, exactly, Cyber Queen. So now it's trying to now the military industrial complex, they want their they want their handouts, they want their bailouts, they want the billions of dollars. And when you look at, someone posted the other day taking a look at some of the I can't remember what particular stocks it were, but their stocks are way up, right? Because everyone's anticipating the massive amount of purchases through the military industrial complex.
Boeing, Raytheon.
There you go. Perfect. Well, listen,
I want to make a comment about the fighter jets in particular. Whoever, I can't remember which country, said that they were going to send them, and then they said, well, we can't do that. And the reason that none of the NATO nations can send in fighter jets in particular and do a no-fly zone is because both of those are considered an act of war. Okay, that would give Russia free rein to begin attacking Europe and the United States, period. Because that is, and so they have to be careful about what they do as far as arming the Ukrainians, okay, until they are ready to go next level, because that will be next level. I mean, if you declare a no-fly zone, that is an act of war.
Yeah.
Period.
Yep. There's no other way of trying to spin that, right? Like in terms of some type of military escalation, you're equivalently, you basically you pass that line in the sand. You're basically stating that we're with you no matter what country's doing it. Absolutely.
That's correct.
Absolutely.
So, and if they send in fighter jets, what's that signal?
Yeah.
That it's the same thing.
Yeah. Cyber Queen and Rory, where do we go from here? Like what's your both thoughts on, like, you know, where do we go from here? I know neither one of us have a magic crystal ball, or, you know, what are your you know, concerns that we navigate through this, or anything that you feel that is like the most of concern. So Rory, I'll go with you first, and then I'll give it over to Cyber Queen. So go for it, Rory.
I'm going to pray a lot. I'm going to continue. That's why I was sitting over here smiling. It's because I'm not going to. CJ, you know that I shut down the Daily Coin, and I pulled way back from all of that, from all of this conversation. And I did that for a reason, because it's too much. I cannot change anything that's going on. I cannot change Kamala. Does my vote even count anymore? Okay. When did it stop counting? I don't know. I know it didn't count in 2020. I can assure you of that.
Yeah.
So I can't beat them twice. I can't beat the machines and the contestants. So I can't do it. It's impossible. So it's so pray a lot more. Spend more time in my community. I'm going to do my level best to bring as many people to Jesus Christ as possible. That's what I'm doing.
Yep.
I mean, because that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Yep.
And I know there's a lot of people going, it's just getting all preachy now. No, I'm not.
No, it's not.
I'm not getting preachy. I'm getting real.
Yep.
Because what are you going to do about Ukraine besides put a flag in your whatever, or buy the T-shirt,
Yeah.
I stopped the war in Russia and got the T-shirt, whatever.
It's like that old joke that there are no atheists in foxholes
There you have it.
That's so true.
in
That is-
times of war.
Wow.
That's a fact right there.
Right. Yeah.
Cyber.
Roy, that's again, Roy, that's why I love having you on. You just you're a straight shooter. You always bring it from that perspective. We've had some one-on-one conversations off the air talking about where you have arrived at your work and your passion with the Gospel News Network. So that's why I love you, brother. That's why I love you.
Thank you. And that's why I love you too, CJ. I mean,
Yep.
and one last thing, what I mean by bringing more people to Jesus is I do something about that. 2 or 3 days a week, I go to a recovery house where I'm one-on-one with people that are struggling with addiction. And I introduce them to recovery. I'm 18 years recovered, and I introduce them to Jesus and try to show them the door that will get them out of the mess that they're in. If there's anybody out there listening, you're welcome to send me an email. I'll be happy to chat with you. The email is info@gospelnewsnetwork.org. If you want to talk, I'll be more than happy to talk anytime, 24/7. So it doesn't matter.
Awesome.
So, Cyber Queen.
Awesome. Cyber Queen, your thoughts, your concern as we navigate through these times.
Yeah, just from a different perspective, I mean, the price of everything, we can expect that to increase. I mean, they keep talking about how Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. The price of wheat has skyrocketed. So really hunker down on, the things that for the average person that's not, rich, which is most people, kind of hunker down on our spending. And, I'm kind of been a bit of a slight prepper, just make sure you have food, water, just basic necessities, and just kind of brace for impact. I know that's not I just heard that in the lexicon a lot this year, brace for impact, with different preachers and different preppers. That's just what the buzzwords kind of are, is like, get ready, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And right before I got on, somebody pointed out that there's a good article on Politico right now by Fiona Hill, who did Putin's biography, and evidently it's very lengthy. And the name of the article is "Yes, He Would: Fiona Hill on Putin and Nukes." So it's a rather lengthy article. I got about a fourth of the way through it.
Okay. Well,
but it's just something to look at, because I mean, I kind of tuned out of what's going on because we're getting so very little like actual information about what's going on, since there's so much false video, disinformation. And so I'm just kind of sitting back and seeing where things kind of fall. Yeah. But I do feel like Putin's not really going for the jugular right now. He's kind of like being very calculated.
Yep, I completely agree.
And he wants them to it's like it said in the article, he wants them to basically overthrow their own government, or lay down arms. Those are their two options.
I think in the grand scheme of the chessboard of what Putin is playing, that he's looked at this three or four different ways and is prepared in numerous ways as he's navigate through this. This was not an easy decision on his part in terms of what's taking place. It was not a knee-jerk reaction. It's very strategic, and so it's very important. And Roy, we'll talk offline at some point, but I think definitely in terms of scripture, no matter where you are, right? Like if whether you're Christian, whatever your thoughts are, I think that that's something that all of us individually need to start thinking about is praying, even for peace, for how do we navigate through this? I don't think any of us want to see the potential for catastrophic loss of life through this escalation. And boy, I tell you what, it's I don't like to hype it up. I don't do anything for clickbait or anything like that. But when you see the remnants of the events unfolding and the escalation, it's very concerning. It truly is. So I think that right now that prayer is very important for all sides. Prayers for Joe Biden. Prayers for Joe Biden to make the right decisions and for him to navigate through this correctly. Same thing with Putin and it's not time for the political shenanigans. And we talked about it here today because it's part of the State of the Union. But I think we have to pray for peace for all of humanity. So I can't thank you enough both for jumping in. Rory, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cyber Queen, thank you for that. For all the people in the chat room hanging out with us this afternoon, we're going to attempt to do more of these. They'll take on different formats. If you have not done so yet, again, please do me a favor. Jump over. Again, this site, people have asked about Rogue and why I created this OMC, because this type of conversation is a different format. It's taking on its own. It's evolving into its own thing. So we're kind of figuring out what it's going to look like, how it's going to feel. So I felt, that it needed to be branded just a little bit differently. So it's just, open mic cast. I want people to feel that they can jump in, join the conversation. Maybe at some point, whether it's addiction, some of those things that people are going through, that, we can have, people in to talk about those things. So do me a favor, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, you can follow my work over on the Twitter handle, which is at producer CJ1. And also do me a favor, support Rory. Go over to his site, which is the gospelnewsnetwork.org. It's a great site, a lot of articles, videos, unfolding. It's where his passion is. So jump over and support his work there.
Just a comment about the website.
Yeah, go for it.
So somebody said something about they were thinking about the Daily Coin just yesterday, and I appreciate that. What you will find at Gospel News Network is remnants of the Daily Coin, my love of the geopolitical, economics, but in health, alternative health, and there's a Christian slant to everything. That's the difference. I wanted to start more honoring our God as opposed to glorifying the other guy, the devil. I just got tired of it. I'm sorry.
No. I'm glad that you took the time to explain to people the pivot or the change. And it's not fair to call it a pivot. It's more of your passion, where your passion took you. So, and then also Rory over on his Twitter handle, which is at the Gospel News Network. I'm sorry, I misspoke that. It was at Gospel News Net W1. I'll put the links in the description post interview. So again, I want to thank you both very much for joining the conversation. All those tuning in, do us a favor again, like, share, and subscribe. And let's do this again real soon. So Rory, Cyber Queen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure and an honor. Bye.